The night that would human history had arrived.
Coming up in this episode,
have you ever truly looked at these idols? They are just stone.
The truth has finally come to us.
We are all equal in the eyes of the Creator.
His influence grows daily. We must find a way to silence him before it is too late for us all.
Do you insult him while I am upon his religion? I say what he says and believe in what he believes. If you can, answer me for that.
he descended the mountain in haste, his heart racing, his thoughts overwhelmed. Moments earlier, he had entered the cave seeking solitude. Now, everything had changed. What had just happened? What was this experience that had shaken him to his core? Why did it feel as though the world he had known only moments ago no longer existed? The words still echoed within him, powerful, unforgettable, unlike anything he had ever heard before. But what did they mean? Why had he been chosen to hear them? And what was expected of him now? As he hurried down the slopes of Hira, one thing had become unmistakably clear. The man descending the mountain was not the same man who had climbed it. He rushed home, not to the chiefs of Makkah, not to the people of influence, but to the one heart he trusted more than any other, Khadijah. He told her what had happened, and for perhaps the first time in years, the man known for his strength and certainty appeared deeply shaken. She listened, then answered with unwavering confidence, "No, never. By God, he will never forsake you. You uphold family ties. You care for the poor. You help those in need. You honor your guests, and you stand beside people in times of hardship." In a world suddenly filled with questions, Khadijah gave him certainty, and before anyone else believed in the message, she believed in the man who carried it.
Because she knew a learned man who had spent years studying the surviving scriptures of the prophets and searching for ancient signs, Khadijah, may God be pleased with her, took her husband's hand and went with him to the house of her cousin, Waraqah ibn Nawfal.
Through the quiet streets of Mecca, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, walked, his heart filled with an experience no human had ever known. Khadijah walked beside him with unwavering certainty that dispelled any fear. When they arrived at Waraqah's house, the venerable scholar sat listening intently and in complete silence. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, told him what he had seen in the Cave of Hira, how the angel had appeared to him, and how he had heard the divine command for the first time.
"I wish I were a strong young man when your people drive you out, so that I could defend you against their harm."
Waraqah was the first to recognize that the man before him had been chosen to carry God's final message to humanity. Before long, his words would begin to come true. The message that started quietly that morning would shake Mecca, dividing people between belief and rejection. Then the revelation ceased for a time, and Muhammad, peace be upon him, longed for the encounter that had changed his life. He wondered if he had truly been chosen to bear a message from God, and what that message was. He often went to the mountains surrounding Mecca, hoping for the return of the Angel Gabriel to show him the way. For many days Muhammad wandered among the mountains and valleys, waiting for a sign that would restore certainty to his heart. Then the answer came from the heavens, clear as daylight, impossible to miss, and a mighty certainty that swept away every doubt.
The sight of Gabriel in his true form was enough to erase every doubt and fill Muhammad's heart with certainty. Yet the majesty of what he had witnessed was more than any human heart could bear. trembling in awe, and as soon as he backed her and saw he enter, he could only say,
Cover me, cover me. As Muhammad wrapped himself in his cloak, trying to comprehend what he had witnessed, the revelation came to him once again, not through the awe-inspiring angelic form that had filled the horizon, but as words descending upon his heart, carrying God's guidance and his divine mission. Then came the decisive call,
يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك فطهر والرجز فاهجر ولا تمنن تستكثر ولربك فاصبر.
O you who are wrapped up, arise and warn. With these words, the mission began. The time of waiting had ended, and Muhammad set forth to deliver the greatest message humanity would ever know. Muhammad quickly answered God's command and began calling those closest to him to the message of one God, worshipping Allah alone, abandoning idols and evil practices, and being patient in the face of hardship. The first to believe in him was his wife, Khadija. Then his family accepted the message, followed by his closest friend, Abu Bakr, who trusted him completely and accepted Islam without hesitation. From this small group, the message of Islam began to spread quietly, preparing the first generation of believers who would carry God's message to the world.
He brings us a clear sign from the Lord of all worlds.
There is no God but God. Submit your will to Him and find peace.
Have you ever truly looked at these idols? They are just stone.
The truth has finally come to us.
We are all equal in the eyes of the Creator.
3 years of quiet, devoted search. Here in the house of Al-Arqam, the first believers gathered. In this sanctuary, the Quran was revealed, bringing peace to their hearts. And in the stillness, they prayed, a secret bond shared only with the divine. A subtle shift began to ripple through the alleys of Mecca. The men whom Quraysh once knew had changed. They abandoned their idols, and in their ranks, the shoulders of masters and slaves stood equal. They walked away from halls of vanity, practicing a prayer unknown to their forefathers. At first, Quraysh dismissed it as a passing phase, believing their traditions and power remained untouched. They did not foresee that this simple change in character was the first seed of a movement that would reshape the world. 3 years of quiet patience had tempered the hearts of the believers in truth. When the time was ripe, the command came to speak openly. The Prophet ascended Mount Safa and issued a call of warning, Ya Sabaha, O, the morning calamity. The markets fell silent and eyes turned toward the hill as he faced his people with the inescapable truth, warning them of a path that leads only to ruin.
We have never known you to be anything but truthful.
The echo of conviction was abruptly shattered, pierced by a voice of sheer denial. As hearts hung in awe and uncertainty, Abu Lahab surged forward, his anger tearing through the silence of the truth with a cry of arrogance. Was it for this that you gathered us? May you perish. Those words marked the first declaration of hostility, the beginning of a new chapter of conflict. He chose blindness, while Mecca stood on the threshold of a dawn from which there was no turning back.
Did you hear what he said? He spoke of one God. Madness.
This new message will divide us.
Yes. But what if he speaks the truth? We must listen.
It was no longer just a call from a hilltop. It became a cry that shook the very foundations of the age of ignorance.
Once the call to monotheism was declared, the lords of Quraysh realized that their status and interests, built upon the worship of idols, were hanging in the balance. Meetings followed one another, and plans were forged behind closed doors, aiming not just to respond, but to crush this movement in its cradle.
His words are swaying too many. We must act.
And what do you propose, old friend? More threats?
Perhaps there is another way to understand this. His influence grows daily. We must find a way to silence him before it is too late for us all.
Quraysh did not stop at planning in the shadows. They moved to crush the vulnerable in the open. The masters of Quraysh initiated even harsher measures, targeting those without tribal protection and every slave who embraced Islam. They hunted them down in their homes and dragged them to torture grounds, forcing them to choose between two fates: return to idol worship and publicly curse the Prophet, or face death beneath the lash of oppression. They believed that by torturing the body, they would extinguish the light of faith within the soul. Yet the agony that gripped the Prophet's heart was no less painful than the physical wounds of his companions. He looked into their eyes and saw beautiful patience, hearing their moans while having no power to shield them save for prayer and perseverance in God's decree. The weight of his inability to protect them exhausted his noble soul. Yet their firm faith and endurance, which surpassed the limits of human capacity, became the shield that shattered the cruelty of the oppressors, proving to the world that faith cannot be broken by lashes. When Mecca became unbearable, the Prophet directed his companions to migrate to the land of Abyssinia, where no one is oppressed. It was not merely an escape, but a journey for dignity and freedom, a new chapter in the history of sacrifice for the sake of monotheism. When the news reached the lords of Quraysh that Muhammad's companions were determined to migrate to Abyssinia, the fires of rage ignited within them. Abu Jahl, seeing their cause slipping through his grasp, cast aside all sense of honor. He lunged at the Prophet with vicious verbal abuse and attempted harm, casting aside all tribal traditions and ignoring the lineage and status that once protected him.
Hamza, your nephew Muhammad has been insulted by Abu Jahl. He was attacked and humiliated.
And so I told him, your new God won't save you from us. He actually believed it.
Strike back if you can! Do you insult him while I am upon his religion? I say what he says and believe in what he believes. If you can, answer me for that.
In that defining moment, Hamza was not merely defending his nephew. He was signaling the birth of a new force for Islam, a force that would never again be intimidated by tyrants.
I bear witness that there is no God but God, and that you, Muhammad, are the messenger of God.
Hamza's acceptance of Islam was far more than a passing event in Mecca. It marked a turning point that deeply troubled Quraysh and fueled the anger of its leaders. They saw the message of Islam growing stronger and more resilient after gaining the support of one of the most powerful men of Banu Hashim. Many of Quraysh's chiefs were enraged, among them Umar ibn Al-Khattab, renowned for his strength, determination, and unwavering resolve. Watching Muhammad's influence grow day after day, he became convinced that something had to be done to stop it. In a moment of intense fury, Umar strapped on his sword and set out in search of Muhammad. He believed that by killing him, he could bring this movement to an end once and for all, and restore to Quraysh the authority and dominance it once enjoyed. But on his way to kill Muhammad, a Muslim man intercepted him and told him that his sister Fatima had converted to Islam, so he changed his course and went quickly to his sister's house. Omar arrived at his sister's house, his heart fueled by rage. Pausing at the threshold, he heard verses of the Quran drifting from within. The words struck him deeply, stirring a profound sense of tranquility. Yet, fearing their influence, he cast the feeling aside and stormed inside. Finding his sister and her husband immersed in the text, his fury reignited instantly. With a sudden, forceful movement, he seized his brother-in-law, his previous anger returning with renewed intensity. When Umar saw the fear in his sister's eyes, his heart softened and his anger began to fade. He stepped back and asked to hear the words they had been reciting. They placed the parchment before him and recited verses from Surah Taha. In the name of God, the most gracious, the most merciful. Taha. We have not sent down the Quran to you to cause you distress, but only as a reminder for those who fear God, a revelation from the one who created the earth and the highest heavens, the most merciful, established above the throne. To him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth, and whatever is between them, and whatever lies beneath the soil. And whether you speak aloud or quietly, he surely knows the secret and what is even more hidden. Quran 21:7. As Umar listened, the power and beauty of the words pierced his heart. The man who had set out to silence the message now found himself standing before its truth.
There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger.
Quraysh had barely come to terms with Hamza's conversion when news spread that Umar ibn Al-Khattab had also embraced Islam. His conversion gave the Muslims new strength and confidence. As Islam continued to spread, the leaders of Quraysh grew increasingly concerned, realizing that this new faith was becoming a real threat to their influence in Mecca. The message had entered a new chapter, and with it began one of the greatest confrontations in the history of Islam. How would Quraysh respond? That is the story of our next episode.